Hello, gorgeous earthlings. It is I, Christina, here at Fit and Bendy in Los Angeles to bring you part 2 of our straddle and middle splits prep series. This is still a prep video, so we're primarily focusing on the musculature of the hips and getting into that hip rotation. We're also going to go a little bit deeper into our straddle and play around with that a little bit more today. So get ready. If it feels like too much, feels too intense, if you're feeling a lot of gripping in your hip flexors, just go back to part 1. It's still right there for you. All right, so you don't need any equipment for today's workout, but there is one thing, if you have it laying around, that could be nice, which is a squishy ball. If you do not have a squishy ball, a pillow or wadded up pair of sweatpants, anything with some squish to it also works great. No big deal. All right. So as usual, please pay attention to your knees. If your knees hurt, if they're having some sort of reaction to the exercise, please either make the exercise a little bit smaller and more gentle, or stop and make sure you know what's going on with your knees and you strengthen your knees. I do have a knee strengthening for middle splits video linked below. So please check that out if your knees are getting angry at you. All right, friends, let's get started. So just like last time, we're going to start laying on our back. If you have a squishy object, you're going to want to have it where you can grab it easily. So we're going to lay down on our backs, and we're just going to say hello with that yummy windshield wiper series. And this is just our way of saying, hi hips, we're getting ready to do some work, and I'm checking in, I'm seeing how my hips feel. Because when we start our workouts, we're probably coming from, maybe we just woke up or we've been running around all day, and we want to just do a little scan, a little check-in to see where our body is, see what might need a little bit more work or a little bit more attention or a little bit more love. Maybe feels a little cranky, but everything's feeling good. So then we can go to the butt glued down windshield wipers, right? Which are a little bit smaller, just like we did last time, feeling the muscularity in the hips. If you have not watched the first video in this series, linked below, check that out before you do this one, just so you know what the heck I'm talking about. Okay, friends? So we're going back and forth a few more times here. And then I'm really going to want to get into the muscularity of my internal rotation. And this is where the squishy object comes in handy. If you do not have a squishy object, you're just going to bring your knees to touch. We're going to go wide with the feet. Now, how wide you go with the feet is going to depend on you. So if you have a lot of internal rotation, you can go really wide. I know some people can get their knees basically down to the floor like that. Not I. But if you are a little tighter, feet go a little bit closer together. And then we're going to take the squishy object and squeeze it between the knees. And we're going to do some little pulses in this position. And the idea is that I'm trying to use these muscles in the front outside of the hip, these TFL muscles, to create this internal rotation. And there's some work happening here. At the same time, I'm thinking about lengthening my knees out that direction. And I'm making sure that I'm not using my spine or my pelvis. So I'm not trying to arch my back to make that happen. Everything from the hip bones up is nice and still. There's a little bit of anchoring that happens with the torso muscles to make that happen. As you go, if you feel like you want to go deeper, you can move those feet a little bit wider, and all of a sudden I have to work a little bit harder. My range just increased. But the squishy ball is really nice, or just some kind of squishy object, having an object to squeeze into, because it gives these muscles a little bit more of a sensation of work, and that's what we want to have. We want to have them feel like squeeze and relax. Squeeze and relax. That dynamic is so good for these muscles that sometimes just kind of get like tight and cranky and don't get a lot of movement to them. Then we're going to go ahead and just squeeze and hold. And as we do this, we can maybe bring the feet a little further apart, and we want to get to a point where those muscles feel challenged. I think I'm getting a little bit of shake here, a tiny little bit of shake, a little bit of shaking where those muscles are like, oh wow, this is actually kind of challenging, even though it looks like I'm doing nothing. Because my favorite thing in the world are exercises that look like you're doing nothing, but they're actually really hard. For some perverse reason, I love that. So here we are, we're just holding this feeling, taking a breath for 3, 2, 1, and then coming out. And I'm going to just bring my feet together, take that squishy ball, And I'm going to open my legs to butterfly. Now, butterfly lying down is the most relaxing of all butterflies because I really have gravity on my side here. And I'm going to take my squishy ball friend and I'm going to put it underneath my right leg. And now I'm going to use that same squeezy feeling to push my knee down into the squishy ball. So I'm activating that muscle in the outside of my butt, those deep rotator muscles right here, to think about pressing my knee down towards the floor. Now, again, it can be very tempting to do something with the spine or to twist in the hips, but nothing's moving except this knee. And as you can see, that's barely moving at all, but I feel a lot. I feel deep work in those outside hips, in those deep butt muscles, and that's what's really important. Let's go ahead and try the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to switch the squishy ball, and there's my left hip. Now, just like with the last exercise, I'm continually checking in with these muscles in the front outside of my hip. All of this, we want it to be lengthening. We want it to be relaxing. So can I get my butt muscle to squeeze, to press down into the squishy ball without my hip flexors tightening up? And that's something that may not happen overnight. It might be something that you need to work on for a while. But pro tip, if you have a really hard time getting these hip flexors to relax when you squeeze your butt less. Make the exercise smaller. Turn down the volume knob on your effort until it's so quiet it's just a little whisper of a muscle engagement, but turn it down as low as you need to get these muscles to be quiet. And then as those muscles get used to it, you can turn the volume knob back up and try harder again. All right, we are now done with our squishy object, so we're going to let that go and go to our full butterfly and try to find both butts at the same time now, pressing those knees down towards the floor. And we're trying to go for depth this time. We're trying to see how close can we get those knees to the floor. And you can feel that if these muscles are tight, they bring your knees back up, right? And they suck the legs into the hip sockets. We want to think of the femurs extending out of the hip sockets, the legs getting longer, and those butt muscles doing the work as these guys get to open up and relax. And then we're going to stop with those muscle squeeze. So I'm pressing my knees down towards the floor, and I'm going to try some different positions with my spine. So I'm going to start by arching my back. Now, for me, when I arch my back, obviously my knees get a lot closer to the floor because it's easier if I'm using my back. But then I'm going to try to keep my knees down and tuck the pelvis under. So I'm squeezing my outside butt to flatten my body out onto the floor without the knees coming up. And I'm going to go back and forth between these two spinal positions, really trying to keep that outside butt on. And what I'm doing here is I'm teaching my outside butt how to work, how to hold my hips and keep them nice and stable and keep them open even when I'm in different positions with my back. You might find it more challenging in some spinal positions than others. It's going to be different for everybody, but I'm really trying to just keep these muscles on no matter what my torso is doing. Good. Let's just do one more arch. And then we're going to stop on this next rounding. I'm trying to flatten my spine out, almost thinking about bringing my tailbone up off the floor, even though it's not actually going to go. That's what I'm imagining is I'm tucking my pelvis under, knees pressing down. I'm just going to hold this position. My outside butt muscles are pretty spicy right now. There's definitely some work happening there. Let's hold it for 3, 2, 1, and then squeeze those inner thighs, bring the legs back in, and we're going to come up to sitting and work a little bit more of our internal rotation. These first two straddle middle videos work a lot of internal rotation because honestly, it's just not something that we work that much in most of our workouts. So most of us need it. So just like last time, we're going to do these seated windshield wipers. If you're feeling pretty good for this one, you can try to do them sitting up without your hands on the floor. If this feels like too much, put them back down. But sitting up and bringing the hands up off the floor, it really makes you have to work your hip muscles a little bit more. So see if you can feel that work through the hips as we move back and forth a few times, scooting forward here. And then we're going to bring both knees over to the left, and we're going to work on that right side a little bit. So knees down on the floor to start. We're going to squeeze that right butt, lift and lower. So this exercise may look familiar to you. We're just using it to kind of get into this routine, kind of feel this hip a little bit. Again, we can make it more challenging by not having the hands down the floor, which makes us have to use our hip muscles a little bit more deeply, a little bit more thoroughly. And then we're going to stop with this hip in the down position. Now, I can rotate towards this knee, which will make it easier. Away from the knee makes it, towards the knee makes it harder. Away makes it easier. And we're going to work on picking this knee up off the floor and lowering it back down. And bam, gets right into that hip socket. So again, we're repeating this exercise from the first installment of this video as a way of getting us ready for what comes next, because we are really going to try to get deeply into the work of this TFL muscle. Good. Let's do 2 more and 1. Now for this one, I personally need to lean away a little bit. Maybe you don't. We are going to try to pick that foot up off the floor. The knee is staying down, just the foot lifting. And this muscle is really going to have to work to make this happen. So it's lifting that foot. It's twisting your leg into internal rotation. This feels miserable. Feel free to put a hand down here because we want to be able to get at least some semblance of engagement, even if that foot is not getting high off the floor. You can see mine's not getting particularly high off the floor here. And also make sure that you're not using the hip, right? I'm not letting this hip bone come forward at all, even though it really, 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 really wants to. Good. Let's do 3, 2, 1. And now we are going to lift that whole leg off the floor. So now I'm working that TFL and I'm also starting to get into these side butt muscles, these muscles in the outside of the hip. For you anatomy nerds, that's the gluteus medius and gluteus minimus. And these are muscles that we are really going to use for our straddle and middle splits, but they're also useful for like life, for standing, for walking, for running. Very good for protecting your hips and your lower back if you have any lower back pain, and for protecting your knees as well. So hopefully you're really feeling this. Again, feel free to put your hand down, lean away a little bit more if you're dying. This should feel pretty challenging. It should feel like a lot of work in the outside of the hip here. Let's do 3 more, and then 2 more. And then last one, maybe hold it up. Spicy, spicy. And then extend that leg out into our half straddle. And we're just doing this to kind of say hello to that leg. I'm going to internally and externally rotate it a few times in this half straddle position. And I'm going to go ahead and lean over that leg. And what I'm feeling as I lean over that leg, I'm not just going to kind of collapse down into it. I'm thinking about using these butt and hip muscles that I just strengthened to pull my body down towards the leg. So when we lean over the leg, it's not just gravity taking us down. It's not just a stretch. It's also a muscle shortening that has to happen. Those hip muscles have to shorten. As we lean forward, we can again see if we can find this internal external rotation of the leg as it gets shorter and shorter and shorter as I go deeper. And so you're thinking of this exercise almost like a strengthening rather than a stretching, even though it's really both. Yeah? So it's just a matter of what you're emphasizing. All right, shall we do the other side? I think yes. Lean back on your hands and let's windshield wiper those legs. And maybe again, bring the body up, come up to sitting. Feel those muscles in the hips. Notice the difference between the right leg and the left leg, and then let's work the left leg, right? So on the left side, we're going to start by lifting and lowering that hip. So just like we did for the right side, we're feeling the left butt squeeze, open up the front of that hip, and set back down. Important reminder, this could potentially put some pressure on your knee. If you are feeling this at all in your knee joint, again, just lean back, make it a little bit gentler on the hip, or maybe skip this exercise until your hips feel a little bit looser, your knees feel a little bit stronger. And again, I do have a link below to a set of exercises you can do to help to strengthen and stabilize your knees. All right, once this is feeling a little bit looser, we're going to sit up, maybe turn towards the knee a little bit and lift and lower that knee and really feel that muscle in the outside front of the hip there and the way that it works to create this movement. And if I lean towards it, becomes a little more difficult. If I lean away, put the hand down, becomes a little bit easier. So find something that feels manageable for you, where you feel like you can do 10 to 20 reps or so, and it feels like you're getting something out of the exercise, but you're really able to target that area. So if we make it too hard, then other muscles end up kicking in and trying to help, and that's not what we want. All right, now we're going to relax that knee down on the floor and try to lift just the foot. This one is very exciting for that muscle, right? Because now we're really using it to create that internal rotation. And again, leaning away will give you a little bit more movement, and there is nothing wrong with that. Leaning closer is going to make that muscle very, very short. It's really going to struggle, and that can also be exciting. So the muscle can learn how to do that. But if the muscle cramps, these muscles are prone to cramping, just put that hand down, lean away, make it a little bit smaller, a little bit more gentle until you can get the kind of like, you want it to engage and then relax, and engage and relax, creating that dynamic. It's all about teaching this muscle that it has different options of things that it can do, different dynamics. And then, of course, the entire leg lift. There it is, that side butt muscle. And for this one, you can see I'm trying to keep my foot and my knee all in one line. Everything is parallel, lifting and lowering. So I'm not lifting my foot up higher or my knee up higher. It's just one big piece lifting up and down. The higher up I sit, the more I try to get my body vertical. It's about all I can do. That's about the hardest I can go. If you lean away, again, this becomes a little bit more gentle. So find what works for you. The wonderful thing about all these exercises, you can really tailor them to work for what you need and where you're at, and you can scale them up and down as needed. And just because you're doing it like this today doesn't mean you can't do it like this tomorrow. Maybe something happens where you want to progress or regress an exercise. So it's always good to have those options. Let's lift and hold, spicy, and extend that leg out. And now we are going to use those muscles for our compression, our leaning over the leg. So finding that rotation, just saying hello to those rotator muscles, and then I'm going to start to lean forward. And can I still find those rotator muscles when I'm leaning forward over the leg? Because obviously it feels different as my body gets closer and closer. Those muscles work differently. And just like with the spinal movement, it's really important to be able to feel how your torso position changes what's happening in your hips so that you're always able to control your hip muscles no matter what position you're in. Sounds pretty sweet, doesn't it? Good. Let's go a little deeper. Squeeze those muscles. And then we're going to come on out and find our straddle. So now I'm opening both legs out. And I'm finding a straddle that feels like reasonable. I'm not trying to crank into my deepest, most impressive straddle right off the bat. I'm just finding a position where I'm like, okay, I'm in straddle. I feel pretty comfortable. And then we're going to use that rotation in both legs at the same time. So I'm going to rotate this right leg in, the left leg goes out, and then the left leg in, and the right leg goes out. So I am alternating internal and external rotation on my two legs, right? Boom, 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 boom. Now, what's cool about this, you might be asking? Well, this is the precursor to a really fun circus move where you internally rotate one leg, externally rotate the other leg to go from one split to another split, right? So this is the beginning of that move, which requires a really nice straddle. It's also very nice for loosening up the hips. We can start to make this move a little bigger. When this leg rotates in, this leg rotates out, we can actually start to lift that hip up off the floor, rotate our bodies to the left to face that foot, and then we switch. This leg goes in, this leg goes out, and I'm rotating to face that leg. And this is very similar to that hip lifting and lowering exercise that we did from our windshield wipers, but now we are doing it from straddle. Right? Let's do one more each side. And then we're going to come back to center. And generally, you will find that after doing that, the hips are very agreeable about opening up a little bit more. We've really loosened them up nicely. From here, we're going to do some nice side-to-side torso movements, just because, again, the torso is connected to the hips. It's connected to the legs. So we want to be able to feel how every time we move, it all works together. And as I lean left, I really have to lean right, I really have to extra work my left hip because it's going to want to follow me, right? So I really have to work that butt to press the hip down, to press the leg down, to keep the leg facing the center, the ceiling. And as I go to the left, it's the same thing with the right leg. I have to work to keep that right leg rotated in the opposite direction. So you can really feel how those butt muscles become so important to respond to the movement in the torso. We can do some static holds here. Let's bring the arms up over the head. We're going to lean to the right and really work that left butt. Try to slide that left leg out just a little bit further, pressing that left hip down into the floor. Hold for 3, 2, 1, back up to center. Same thing, other side. I'm going to lean to the left. I'm going to externally rotate that right leg and I'm going to push it down. I'm really trying to get this butt back down on the ground. See how it wants to kind of lift up and follow your body? Push that butt down. Makes you have to work a lot harder, really engages those butt muscles. And back up to center. And now we are going to come forward into our pancake stretch. Again, very important that you don't turn this into sort of like a half sort of middle split hybrid where the legs start to come forward, right? My butt stays solid on the floor, my knees, my toes, my thigh bones all facing up towards the ceiling. So as I come forward, I really like this little side. Let's just find that nice side to side. Feels all gooey and gentle and yummy. And breathe. And just allow the body to come closer to the floor. We're not trying to force it. We're just allowing it to come down. And with the hands pressed into the floor, let's find our spinal movement again. So as you arch the back, you can feel how much the butt muscles have to work to pull those pinky toes back, rotate the legs back so they still face the ceiling. And then I can round the spine, maybe come a little bit deeper. Let's do the same thing again. Arch the back. Feel those butt muscles. Feel like you're trying to slide the feet even further back behind you and round. And let's do it one more time. Arch, maybe come a little bit deeper, get a little closer to the floor and round. And as you round, maybe you come all the way down, maybe you don't, right? Whatever. Come as deep as you can. Just feel it happen. Take some breaths. Check in with your legs. Are they still facing the ceiling? What's happening with them? Can you still feel your butt muscles? You got to feel your butt muscles the whole time. And then let's walk the hands back in and rescue your legs. So we're going to squeeze them together, pat them down. And that's it. You did it. Yay. So this series of exercises, if you do them regularly, you're really going to notice a difference in how your hips feel. Increase your mobility, increase the way that you feel that strength. And that's just going to create a lot more stability in your pelvis, not just for splits, but for your life. So really, really important to keep these hip muscles strong and gooey. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching. If you like it, like, subscribe, follow us at Fit and Bendy for more delicious tips and tricks. We have a whole series here on straddle and middle splits as well as on front splits. So please follow us and let's all get gooey together. All right. Thank you, everybody. Happy bendings.